Snow fell in thick sheets, swirling around the armored boots of the invaders as they descended from their transports. The frozen colony world of Borealis Prime stretched wide and white before them, its jagged cliffs and windswept plains bathed in the pale light of a distant sun. To the Galactic Armies, it was just another backwater settlement, a primitive outpost barely worth the munitions being expended. Yet orders were orders, and the High Command had made their intent clear. Humanity would bend, or humanity would break. Commander Varric marched to the front, his armor gleaming with the insignia of the Zor Dominion. A lifetime of campaigns had made him confident in their doctrine. Most species, when confronted with overwhelming firepower, laid down arms after the first bombardment. Terror and despair were weapons just as effective as plasma cannons, and Varric had no doubt these soft-skinned bipeds would behave the same. He had studied their physiology, their meager technology, and their history of tribal wars. To him, they were another species yet to understand their place in the hierarchy of civilized order. Inside the colony, the humans had gathered. Their defenses were crude, sandbag walls reinforced with scavenged steel, railguns assembled from mining equipment, and old atmospheric processors turned into makeshift barricades. But what they lacked in polish, they compensated with determination. Among them stood Captain Elias Kane, broad-shouldered, face weathered by years of frontier life. His uniform was mismatched, part military surplus and part civilian gear, but the authority in his voice carried weight as he addressed the huddled defenders. "They think fear will win this fight," Kane said, his breath steaming in the frigid air. "They've never met humans before." He glanced at Sergeant Mira Vance, his second in command, whose sharp eyes scanned the horizon with steady resolve. She had been a miner before the warships came, her hands calloused from labor, her spirit hardened by loss. When she nodded, the defenders straightened, weapons clutched tighter, as though her confidence alone had given them strength. The first assault came like a storm. Plasma artillery screamed through the sky, detonating against the outer defenses with blinding light. The ground shook, snow erupting into clouds of vapor. Dozens of alien soldiers advanced in perfect formation, rifles glowing with charged energy. Their helmets reflected the fire of their weapons as they fired disciplined bursts into the colony's walls. But instead of panic, the humans answered with fire of their own. Improvised railguns spat metal slugs that tore through the first wave of attackers. Hunters turned snipers struck from icy ridges, each shot dropping another soldier with unerring precision. Explosive charges, buried in the snow, erupted under the boots of advancing squads, scattering limbs and armor into the wind. Commander Varric snarled within his helmet as the reports came in. Casualties were higher than projected. These creatures did not flee. They did not bow. He increased the pressure, ordering another wave forward, but the resistance only grew fiercer. Inside the colony, Kane moved among his fighters, steadying nerves and reloading rifles. "Hold the line," he shouted, voice carrying above the thunder. "Every second we fight, every enemy we bring down, the others out there know we will not break." His words mattered more than the bullets. The colonists, farmers and engineers, mothers and sons, transformed into soldiers under his command. Mira crouched beside a barricade, eyes narrowed as she sighted an alien officer through her scope. She exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger, and watched the figure crumple into the snow. She did not smile. There was no joy in killing, only necessity. But she knew each shot sent a message stronger than words. Humanity would bleed, but it would not surrender. The aliens adapted, switching to heavier weapons, scorching the barricades with beams that melted steel. One by one, defenses collapsed. The air filled with screams, smoke, and the acrid stench of burning structures. Still, the humans did not retreat. They fell back only to regroup, striking from alleys, tunnels, and hidden vantage points. Every corner of the colony became a battlefield. Kane found himself face to face with an enemy squad that had breached the eastern gate. His rifle barked fire as he cut down two before they could raise their weapons. The third lunged with a blade of shimmering plasma, but Kane met it with the butt of his rifle, smashing through the alien's helmet. He stood panting, blood on his hands, and realized something deeper than survival was unfolding. His people were not just fighting, they were teaching the galaxy a lesson it had never learned. As night fell, the battlefield froze again, bodies of both human and alien littering the snow. The first day of war on Borealis Prime had ended, but the outcome was far from decided. Commander Varric reviewed the casualty reports with disbelief. Hundreds dead, equipment lost, progress negligible. Against primitives? Unthinkable. He clenched his fists, promising that the dawn would bring annihilation. In the battered command post, Kane gathered the survivors. They were exhausted, their faces streaked with soot and blood, but their eyes burned with fire. "They think tomorrow will end us," Kane said, his voice quiet yet unyielding. "But tomorrow we show them who we are. We don't fear war. We never have." Mira looked at him, her expression hard yet resolute. "Then let's make sure they remember it." The defenders nodded, silent agreement passing among them. Somewhere in the darkness, distant engines roared as the alien war machines prepared for another strike. But within the colony walls, the humans stood ready. Fear had no place among them, only resolve. When the comms crackled with intercepted alien transmissions, describing humans as irrational, dangerous, and unyielding, Kane felt a grim satisfaction. They still misunderstood. Fear was a weapon the Galactic Armies had always relied upon, but here on Borealis Prime, that weapon was useless. Humanity had lived with war since the dawn of its history. War was not a terror to them. It was a forge. The night stretched on, snow covering the ruins of the day, but within the silence lingered a promise. The Galactic Armies had thought this would be easy. They had thought fear would do the work for them. Now, they had learned the first lesson. Humanity would fight, not because it hoped for survival, but because it refused defeat. And as the stars wheeled overhead, Elias Kane whispered the words that would echo far beyond Borealis Prime. "They don't know what they've started." The second day dawned gray and merciless, the light filtering through a sky still bruised by smoke. The colony of Borealis Prime bore scars from the previous battle, shattered walls, burned-out shelters, and snow stained with blood both alien and human. The defenders had buried their dead hastily during the night. Silent prayers whispered over makeshift graves. Captain Elias Kane stood at the edge of the burial ground, the cold wind stinging his face. He felt the weight of every name, every life extinguished under his command, yet he carried it not as a burden but as fuel. His people had endured the first strike. They would endure the next. The Galactic Armies were not idle. Commander Varric convened his officers aboard the flagship orbiting Borealis Prime, the chamber lit with pale, holographic projections of the battlefield. Casualty numbers scrolled across the displays, far higher than any operation of this scale should have demanded. His subordinates spoke with unease, questioning human tactics, their disobedience to universal patterns of surrender. Varric silenced them with a glare, though unease gnawed at his own certainty. Fear had always broken species before. It was the Dominion's unassailable weapon. Yet these humans did not break. They fought like cornered predators, and worse, they fought with ingenuity. Down on the surface, Sergeant Mira Vance surveyed the eastern perimeter with a practiced eye. She had worked through the night, reinforcing barricades with scavenged metal plates and rigging traps for mining explosives. Her hands were raw and blistered, but her mind remained sharp. She had no illusions about survival. Every hour gained was a miracle, but she believed in Kane, and more importantly, she believed in the people standing beside her. The miners, farmers, and engineers had shed hesitation. Their movements were brisk, purposeful, as if war had always been waiting inside them, needing only the right spark. When the assault began again, it came with greater fury. Orbital strikes hammered the outskirts, reducing ridges to molten glass. Armored walkers advanced in formation, their cannons blazing, while swarms of infantry pressed behind them. To Varric, it was a guaranteed annihilation. To Kane, it was opportunity. He directed his fighters into narrow choke points where alien machines could not maneuver. The humans swarmed from concealed tunnels and hidden trenches, flanking the war machines with improvised explosives. One miner strapped a bundle of charges to his chest and threw himself beneath a walker's legs, detonating in a blaze that toppled the machine onto its comrades. Kane saw the blast from a distance, his gut twisting with grief and admiration. He did not speak of martyrdom. He spoke of strategy. Every sacrifice bought time. Every delay chipped away at the enemy's confidence. He moved constantly along the defensive lines, his presence anchoring the morale of the weary. They think numbers win wars, he shouted over the din. They don't know what spirit looks like. Mira fought with precision, her rifle steady even when alien fire scorched the air inches from her position. She took no reckless risks, but she never hesitated to place herself where others faltered. In the chaos of battle, she dragged a wounded boy from the rubble, pressed a weapon into his shaking hands, and told him, "Stand. They fear us more than we fear them." She believed it, though she saw the alien advance cutting deeper with every passing hour. Above, Varric received fragmented reports. His troops spoke of human ambushes, of enemies charging headlong into fire with no regard for survival, of children wielding rifles with the same defiance as soldiers. He dismissed the panic as exaggeration, yet the seed of doubt grew. He had led campaigns across a dozen worlds, broken species with centuries of warfare in their blood, and yet these humans unnerved him. They did not cling to life the way others did. They wielded it like a weapon. The turning point came when a supply convoy attempted to reinforce the alien advance. Loaded with munitions and medical equipment, it moved along a ridge line under light escort. Kane and Mira led a strike team through icy ravines, emerging in perfect position to ambush. The firefight was short, brutal, and decisive. Human rifles tore through the escort, grenades crippled the transports, and within minutes the survivors fled, leaving crates of alien technology behind. The defenders worked quickly, hauling away whatever could be repurposed. Mira cracked open a weapons cache, marveling at the sleek design of plasma rifles. Within hours, engineers were adapting the alien power cells to human railguns, blending the technologies into something deadlier than either alone. Kane recorded a message using capture transmitters. His voice carried not just to the colony, but to every channel the aliens monitored. "You thought fear would conquer us," Kane said, his eyes fierce beneath the flicker of static. "But we do not fear war. We are forged by it. Every world we've settled, every storm we've endured, has prepared us for this moment. You bleed us, and we rise stronger. You threaten us, and we sharpen our resolve. Remember this, humanity does not surrender." The broadcast rippled through the alien ranks, and even Varric heard it aboard his flagship. He replayed the words in silence, unsettled by their clarity. His officers muttered about psychological warfare, about human arrogance, but none denied the effect. For the first time, Dominion soldiers hesitated before marching into the fire. Back in the colony, the people listened as Kane's voice echoed through their battered shelters. They cheered, not with triumph, but with conviction. Their exhaustion eased, their spirits lifted. Mira stood beside him, studying his profile in the glow of the transmitter. He was no prophet, no general bred for war, yet he carried the weight of humanity's defiance in his shoulders. She realized then that their survival was not only resistance, it was revelation. The galaxy had never known a species that welcomed war as challenge rather than curse. The day's battle ended with both sides bloodied. Smoke curled into the dim sky, and the snow was blackened by ash. Humans carried their wounded into shelters, patching wounds with scavenged medkits, rationing what little food remained. Yet they smiled through their pain, trading stories of narrow escapes and hard-won kills. Mira moved among them, checking every barricade, every rifle, her presence a quiet reassurance. Kane sat briefly, head bowed, but his mind raced with plans. Varric retreated to his private quarters, pacing before the viewport where Borealis Prime spun below. He should have been preparing the final strike, yet unease coiled in his chest. These humans did not fear death, and that made them dangerous in a way no other enemy had ever been. He remembered the old Dominion maxim, "Fear is the chain that binds lesser species," and wondered for the first time in his career what happens when the chain snaps. Night settled again over Borealis Prime, cold and silent. In the colony, Kane and Mira stood watch at the wall, the horizon glimmering with the faint fires of retreating enemy craft. For the first time, Kane felt not just resistance, but momentum. He turned to Mira, his voice low but steady. "They're learning the truth," he said. She nodded, tightening her grip on her rifle. "And once they learn it, it'll already be too late." Snowstorms swept across Borealis Prime as though the planet itself wished to bury the carnage beneath white silence. But war did not rest. The third day began with fire streaking from the heavens as Dominion gunships descended, their engines shrieking against the frozen air. Inside the battered colony, Elias Kane tightened the straps of his armor and surveyed the weary fighters gathered around him. Their faces were gaunt, eyes shadowed by fatigue, yet their stances were unshaken. He knew what kept them standing was not hope of rescue. No fleet was coming, but the conviction that yielding was worse than death. Sergeant Mira Vance moved through the defenders like a spark through tinder, checking rifles, replacing power cells, clapping shoulders with silent encouragement. She rarely smiled, but her presence steadied those near her. Where Kane embodied the voice of defiance, Mira was the hand that enforced discipline, the sharp edge that made survival possible. The pair had grown into pillars for the colony, different in manner, yet bound by the same unyielding core. When the first bombardment struck, the colony shook as though the earth itself rebelled. Buildings collapsed in showers of ice and steel. The barricades Mira had reinforced splintered under sustained fire, and the outer defenses fell one by one. Alien infantry poured into the streets, their armor reflecting the glow of plasma fire, their chants promising domination. But this time, the humans did not simply hold their ground. They surged forward. Ambushes erupted at every corner. Mines hidden beneath snowdrifts ignited with thunderclaps, tearing squads apart. Colonists wielding captured plasma rifles unleashed disciplined volleys, cutting down Dominion soldiers in waves. The snow became a killing field, a labyrinth of choke points and death traps. What had begun as desperation evolved into mastery. Humanity was learning faster than the Dominion could adapt. Kane led from the front, his rifle blazing as he ducked between barricades and rubble. He moved with the precision of a soldier born for this, though in truth his past had been filled with mining disputes and frontier skirmishes. War had forged him anew. His commands were crisp, his tactics daring, and his courage infectious. He shouted to those around him, urging them not to yield an inch, and the defenders answered with ferocity that startled even themselves. Mira held the western flank, orchestrating sharpshooters from concealed vantage points. She directed fire with calm precision, eliminating officers and gunners, unraveling Dominion formations. When a breach threatened to collapse their defense, she charged into the gap herself, rallying fighters with the steadiness of her aim. Her hands were blistered, her body bruised, yet her spirit refused to waver. She had no illusions. Each hour was borrowed time, but she intended to spend every breath making the invaders bleed. Above the battlefield, Commander Varric watched the conflict unfold through holographic feeds. His jaw tightened as he observed disciplined formations collapsing under human assault. Reports flooded in, describing Dominion soldiers abandoning positions, panicked by the humans' relentless attacks. Varric's doctrine of fear was unraveling before his eyes. The humans did not tremble when death loomed. They roared. They sang as they fought. His forces, bred to dominate through intimidation, were breaking against an enemy that could not be cowed. As the day wore on, the snow turned crimson, and yet the humans pressed harder. They no longer fought to delay. They fought to reclaim. Using captured supply crates, Engineers fashioned heavier weapons, combining human ingenuity with Dominion technology. Crude railguns spat plasma-enhanced projectiles that ripped through enemy armor. Grenades built from scavenged cells turned entire squads into smoldering wreckage. Every innovation came from necessity. Every act of defiance sharpened into victory. The battle reached its zenith when a column of Dominion walkers advanced through the central avenue, their cannons tearing through the colony's core. Civilians screamed as buildings collapsed, but Kane gathered a strike team and charged directly into the mechanical beasts. Explosives strapped to sleds were driven beneath their legs, detonating in synchronized bursts that toppled the towering machines. Kane himself climbed onto one crippled walker, blasting through its cockpit hatch and dragging the pilot into the snow. The image of their captain standing atop the smoking wreck ignited a wave of cheers among the defenders. Mira witnessed the moment from her position and allowed herself a rare smile. For the first time since the invasion began, the Dominion was not advancing. They were retreating. She pressed the attack, coordinating crossfire that forced alien soldiers into frantic withdrawals. What had been an army of conquest only days before was now a collection of frightened soldiers stumbling backward under human fire. Varick's fury boiled as the retreat unfolded. He slammed his fist against the console, demanding his officers explain the collapse. They offered excuses: poor morale, lack of discipline, unexpected human tactics. None admitted the truth. That fear, the weapon upon which the Dominion had built its empire, no longer served them. Varick understood it nonetheless. These humans were immune to terror. Worse, they had turned war itself into a declaration of identity. They did not merely endure battle. They embraced it. As the sun set, the battlefield quieted. Fires burned across the colony, their smoke drifting into the star-streaked sky. Among the ruins, humans celebrated not with revelry, but with grim determination. They tended the wounded, repaired weapons, and salvaged every scrap of usable material. Kane walked the lines, exhaustion etched deep into his features, yet his eyes still burned with purpose. He clasped hands, offered words of gratitude, and reminded them the fight was far from finished. Mira joined him, her uniform singed, her rifle slung across her back. "They're cracking," she said quietly. "Their soldiers fear us more than we fear them." Kane nodded, though he did not allow triumph to dull his focus. Fear was their weapon. Now it's turned against them. But they'll come back harder. They have to. She studied him in the dim light, recognizing the weight he carried. He bore not only command, but the shaping of a legacy. For the first time, she wondered if humanity's defiance on Borealis Prime was not just survival, but the birth of something larger, a war that would echo across the stars. High above, in the silence of his quarters, Varick stared at the casualty reports once more. Entire battalions decimated, morale shattered, supplies dwindling. His subordinates whispered of withdrawal, of regrouping. He silenced them with threats, but even he could not banish the truth pressing in on him. The humans had revealed the Dominion's greatest vulnerability. Fear could conquer the weak, but against the fearless, it crumbled. The third day closed with humanity still standing, battered but unbroken, while the Dominion staggered under its own doubts. Kane gazed at the stars beyond the smoke, his thoughts already leaping to the battles yet to come. The war was far from over, but the tide was shifting. What began as survival was becoming revelation. Humanity had shown the galaxy that it did not fear war. And now, with the enemy faltering, the true storm was only beginning. The fourth day began with silence, an unnatural lull that unsettled every soul on Borealis Prime. The defenders had grown used to the thunder of bombardments and the ceaseless advance of Dominion troops. Now the horizon lay still, blanketed in snow, as if the enemy had simply vanished. Elias Kane stood on the northern wall, his rifle slung across his back, his breath misting in the icy air. He had learned to distrust quiet. War was a creature of rhythm, assault, reprieve, escalation, and this calm carried the weight of something waiting to break. Sergeant Mira Vance joined him, her expression taut, her eyes fixed on the sky. She had not slept, had scarcely eaten, yet her movements remained sharp, efficient. "They're regrouping," she said. "Pulling back doesn't mean surrender. It means they're preparing something worse." Kane nodded. He had felt the same unease gnawing at him. The Dominion had underestimated them, but empires did not crumble in a week. They would return with overwhelming force, perhaps with an armada so vast the colony would vanish beneath its fire. And yet, for the first time, Kane felt not dread but determination. Fear had no purchase here. His people had bled, endured, and proven themselves against an enemy that had conquered worlds unchallenged. If the Dominion thought retreat would sow hesitation, they were mistaken. It had only sharpened humanity's resolve. In orbit, Commander Varric stared at the fractured remains of his army. The reports were damning. Battalions routed, officers slain, supplies raided by human insurgents. Discipline had rotted under the strain of relentless resistance. Soldiers whispered that humans were not prey, but predators wearing the skins of mortals. Varric's advisors urged him to withdraw entirely, to preserve what remained of their strength, but he refused. Pride and fury bound him. To retreat was to admit that fear, the Dominion's foundation, had failed. Instead, he resolved to unleash everything, a decisive strike to erase Borealis Prime and bury its lesson before it spread further. When the fleet descended, the sky split open with fire. Dozens of warships blotted out the stars, their cannons poised, their engines roaring. The ground trembled beneath the weight of their bombardments, and the colony shuddered as wave after wave of destruction rained down. Entire blocks vanished in firestorms. Barricades evaporated under beams of molten energy, and the defenders scattered into tunnels and trenches to avoid annihilation. Yet even as the world cracked, the humans did not break. Kane rallied his fighters from the depths of the command shelter, his voice carried through crackling calms. "They think this is the end. It isn't. Every shot we fire, every second we survive, we prove them wrong. They wanted fear. Give them defiance." His words carried through the chaos, anchoring the will of his people. Even those too injured to stand raised their fists in answer. Mira coordinated the counterattacks, dispatching strike teams into the burning streets. She had mapped every tunnel, every hidden path through the ruins, and she used them to harry the invaders. Small groups of humans emerged from smoke-filled alleys, striking swiftly before melting away again. They carried captured rifles, improvised bombs, even sharpened blades scavenged from wreckage. Dominion soldiers, bred to expect submission, found themselves hunted by an enemy that did not know how to yield. The battle culminated in the central square, where Dominion troops massed to break through the last line of defense. Varric himself descended, towering in heavy command armor, determined to crush the humans with his presence. His voice thundered through amplifiers, promising extermination, demanding surrender. But instead of cowering, the defenders roared their defiance. They answered with songs, chants, and the crack of rifles. For every threat he issued, they answered with fire. Kane met Varric in the heart of the square. Blaster fire lit the ruins around them. Snow melted to ash beneath their feet. The commander towered above him, but Kane did not flinch. "You thought fear would win this war," Kane shouted, his voice carrying through the din. "You thought we'd bow like the others. You were wrong." He raised his rifle, his shots tearing into Varric's armor. The alien staggered, retaliated with plasma blasts, but Kane pressed forward, every step a declaration. Mira covered him, her shots precise, stripping away Varric's defenses until Kane drove the final strike that brought the commander crashing to the ground. The Dominion line wavered as their leader fell. Whispers spread like wildfire. Humans had slain a commander in open combat. Panic surged through alien ranks, and retreat became rout. Ships abandoned their bombardments to extract survivors, leaving wreckage and smoldering craters behind. The once mighty Galactic Armies fled from a colony they had expected to erase in a single stroke. Silence returned at last, but this time it was different. The defenders stood among the ruins, battered and bloodied, yet alive. Victory was not triumph, but survival, and survival was enough. Kane surveyed his people, pride tempered by grief for those lost. He knew Borealis Prime had won more than a battle. It had sent a message that would echo across the stars. Humanity did not fear war. It endured it, wielded it, and turned it back upon those who sought to enslave them. Mira approached, her face streaked with soot, her eyes sharp despite exhaustion. "They'll be back," she said. "Good," Kane replied, his voice steady. "Let them come. We've shown them who we are. Now, the galaxy knows." Above, the Dominion fleet retreated into the void, but Varric's final thoughts lingered. His dying breaths carried a revelation the Council would not ignore. Humanity was unlike any species they had ever faced. They could be killed but not subdued, and in their defiance lay the seeds of rebellion that could spread far beyond Borealis Prime. As night reclaimed the battlefield, the humans gathered among fires, their songs rising into the cold air. They mourned, they honored, and they prepared. For though the invaders had withdrawn, Kane and Mira knew the war was not finished. The Dominion would strike again with greater force, but it no longer mattered. The galaxy had glimpsed the truth, and the truth could not be buried. Humanity did not fear war. Humanity was war. Kane looked to the stars, his voice quiet but resolute. They'll remember this day. They'll remember us. And when they come again, they'll know it's already too late.